Schema therapy. Understanding the patterns behind our emotional struggles. Have you ever noticed that you keep reacting to certain situations in the same way? Maybe you constantly worry that people will reject you. Maybe you find it difficult to trust others. Or perhaps you feel that you have to be perfect, successful, or useful in order to be valued. You might even understand intellectually that these reactions don't always make sense, but somehow you still can't stop them. This is where schema therapy can offer an interesting way of understanding ourselves. So what exactly is schema therapy? Schema therapy was developed by psychologist Jeffrey Young. It grew out of cognitive behavioral therapy, but it also incorporates ideas from attachment theory, developmental psychology, psychodynamic therapy, and experiential approaches. The central idea is that many of our emotional difficulties are connected to deeply held patterns called schemas. A schema is like a mental and emotional template that develops through our experiences, particularly during childhood. It influences how we see ourselves, other people, and the world around us. For example, imagine a child who grows up with parents who are emotionally unavailable. The child may repeatedly experience the feeling, "My needs don't really matter." Over time, this experience can become a deeper belief. Other people won't be there for me. As an adult, that person might become extremely independent and avoid asking anyone for help. Or they might become very anxious whenever someone becomes emotionally distant. The situation is different, but the underlying schema may be the same. Schema therapy identifies a number of different schemas. Some examples include abandonment, where a person expects important people to leave them. There's defectiveness or shame, where someone feels fundamentally flawed or unworthy. There's emotional deprivation, where a person expects that their emotional needs won't be understood or met. And there's unrelenting standards, where someone feels they must constantly achieve or perform at a very high level. There are many others, but here's something important. Having a schema doesn't necessarily mean that there's something wrong with you. Schemas often developed for a reason. They may have helped us cope with difficult circumstances when we were younger. Let's take an example. Imagine a child who grows up in a very critical family. Whenever they make a mistake, they hear things like, "You should have done better. Why can't you be like your brother?" The child may eventually develop a schema of defectiveness or unrelenting standards. As an adult, they might become extremely successful. They work hard, achieve a lot, and appear confident. But internally, they may constantly feel, "I'm still not good enough." So the behavior that looks like ambition might actually be connected to an old emotional wound. And this brings us to another important concept in schema therapy: schema modes. A schema is a long-term pattern. A schema mode is more like the emotional state we're in at a particular moment. For example, someone might suddenly feel like a frightened child after receiving criticism from their manager. They might feel small, helpless, ashamed, or terrified of being rejected. Schema therapy might describe this as a vulnerable child mode being activated. Another person might respond to emotional pain by becoming extremely demanding or critical of themselves. This could involve what schema therapy calls a punitive or demanding parent mode. And sometimes people develop coping modes. For example, someone might emotionally disconnect whenever they feel hurt. They might tell themselves, "I don't need anybody." This can protect them from vulnerability, but it can also make it difficult to form close relationships. So, in therapy, the goal isn't simply to say, "This is an irrational thought, let's replace it." Instead, schema therapy tries to understand where the pattern came from, how it developed, how it affects the person's life today, and what emotional needs may not have been met.